Oh, really? First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the staff of the Aurora Senior Center for having us here this evening, and all of you. If Dave and I were to sit here without you tonight, we really probably would pull out a deck of cards, because it really wouldn't matter. And for the people, it's important to us that you're here and that you care. I mean, that's really why we're both running, because we want to do a good job for people who care. So thank you. I also, sorry, let's start from the beginning. About 6 months ago, a friend of mine came to me and asked me to run for the New York State Assembly in the 147th District. At the time, I told her the same thing I told other people who had asked me, and I said no. However, this friend of mine is a very honest and noble woman who I admire greatly. And so I went back to her and I said, why? Why did you ask me? And she said, because I believe you can do the job. Well, 6 months later, 1,000 miles, over 30 towns and villages, and countless door knocking, event attending, and partisan or non-partisan meeting with voters, I can tell you that my friend is wrong. Because I'm here to tell you now that I know I can do this job. And while there are many reasons why, I don't only have a minute left to tell you those things, and so rather than tell you that, I'm telling you that I am running for this office to become a public servant, not a politician. And with the independent mindset to work with everyone who will be in the Assembly to make our community a better place for our generation and the generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. DiPietro.
Also, thank you for coming tonight. It's always a pleasure, and it's always nice to be in my hometown and not have to drive forever to, as I have been around this. This district stretches from Lake Erie all the way to Livingston County. So both of us have our cars have put a lot of miles on, talked to a lot of people. But I'd like to start with telling you that I do have still, even 4 years later, one of the best records in New York State on the government side for cutting taxes, cutting positions, consolidating, merging services. We've done a lot of that. I tell people I can do that in my sleep because I've done it. I've cut my teeth at it at the local level. But I wanted to tell you why I'm really running. One of the things that really drives me, my passion, is helping people. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago when I actually started putting some things down on paper that people told me, you know what, you actually go out and do some things and get some things done. And I'm proud that I do actually have a record of getting things done, and I really enjoy it. So I'm going to go through a few of them, because one thing I want you to understand, that as I've done a lot of these, we've done some of these things, it's crossed party lines, okay? This isn't a Republican or Democrat. It's helped everybody. And I was a volunteer of the year for the Lothlorien Therapeutic Riding Center in 2004. I brought one of the proud events was when I first in '99 brought the fireworks back to East Aurora after a 14-year absence, and you can see it's brought over from Chamber of Commerce estimates about 30,000 people into this community. Organized the 9/11 fundraiser. I raised over $30,000, and it was the largest at the time, the largest private community organization donors in Western New York. Founded and organized East Aurora Pray for Peace, Support Our Troops rally. I founded a Bikes for Needy Kids program. We took all the bikes from a couple of different police stations they stored them, that had been stolen or compounded, and we ended up, they auctioned them and we took them. And my time's up. I want to tell you, we had a thing with the school, and I took these, and the bike place in East Aurora fixed them all up, and we donated them to needy kids, and it was approximately 60 bikes. 60 families at Christmas got these bikes for their kids that otherwise couldn't have afforded it.
Thank you very much. Now we have a time for questions, and there are a whole handful which have come from the audience. Each candidate will be asked to answer each question, and the order will be alternating, so that first one will have the first, and then the next will have the first question. So, this time, since Christina Apt began, Dave DiPietro gets the first question, and then Christina. The first question, The 147th Assembly District covers a lot of territory. What is your strategy for communicating with the constituents? How would you communicate?
I've run in this district, so I did Wyoming County 2 years ago and 4 years ago. I have a great track record there in which I did win the primary. One of the things I want to do when elected is I want to have volunteers go to board meetings once a month in the 16 different towns in Wyoming County and then report back to me. Right now that's not done. I think that's a great way to keep your pulse on what's going on in the community. We've already started doing that. We have people who inform me what's going on in different towns in Erie County and in Wyoming County, but once I'm elected, hopefully that I would like that in every town and at least be able to keep my pulse. That way, every week or every 2 weeks, I can make a call to some of the elected officials and say, well, here, this is what's going on. Right now, I'm doing it in Attica. Two of the trustees and the mayor are calling me because if you've been following the big blaze that was in that pile of garbage or whatever they had there, it's been a huge issue out there, and I've gone out to their last 2 meetings. I'm planning to go to the next one, and it's. Can you guys hear me? I'm sort of
yeah.
Okay. So that's what I'm trying to do. Like with Attica, it's having the trustees and the mayor call and ask and having you come up, show up your support out there. It means a lot to a community, and especially when you go out in a little town. When you go out to Pike or Gainesville or Sardinia, and you show up. A lot of times the smaller towns don't get a higher up state official show up. So when I do, it's nice because they like to know that you care, and that's the whole reason you're doing it. And being as the mayor and as a trustee, I do care, and I've shown that, and hopefully I can bring that message to Albany, but to all the constituents, and especially in Wyoming County. I always tell people I don't need a GPS to get around back there, and and even on the dirt roads I navigate pretty well. I've gotten to know the county very well, and that's where I want to just continue that.
For those of you who don't know very much about me, my career for 30 years has been communicating as a media person, and then I also worked for the Erie County Legislature. So that's been something that I've done not only naturally, but as part of my job. I think it's really important to understand that this district is made up of 2 really interesting counties, part of Southern Erie County and then all of Wyoming County, that have similarities but also have diversities. And so it's going to be important to make sure that we give each their due. I plan on having a district office in each side, and while I understand that funding is an issue, and I'm not saying that they would be open every day, but I would make sure that if I could have one office that could be open for 5 days a week, we would split that between the 2 districts. Something I've done as a candidate is done a lot of online and direct constituent communication. I have a website set up where people are constantly emailing me. To my distress, at 11 o'clock at night, there will be new emails from people wanting to know about my campaign, wanting to know about me, wanting to know about the issues. That's direct contact that can't be replaced in any other way other than going to door and in 1,100 square miles with over almost 90,000 registered voters, that's really an impossibility. So I think that online is a way of the future. I also have a Facebook page where people can be interactive without necessarily having me there. The idea of having representatives at town meetings and interacting with the current people, because I have been with the legislature, because I do have family in Wyoming County, I am in constant contact and already have been having meetings with our state senators, our state assembly people, as well as the individual town representatives on all the issues that are going on. Because communication, it's about taking the time to let people know you care enough that they know when something is needed, they'll call you. It's just that simple, and I will be there. I've been there already, and because I've had that experience in the legislature, I was a chief of staff for a constituent office. So constituent issues are something I understand completely, as well as I serve the legislature. I understand what it is to work with government officials. Thank you.
Christina is first on the next question. This is a combination. What do you believe is the most important issue facing our district? And what can you bring to the 147th district that your opponent cannot?
Okay, if it's a combined question, do we get 4 minutes? All right, so fast and Furious. The biggest issue is what you hear all the time in the media when they say it's the economy, stupid. Obviously, New York State is challenged in jobs and challenged in our budget and our economic issues. And what's the question, what could I do about it?
And what can you do that your opponent can't?
Well, the second part of that question is, while Dave and I both clearly care, and that's why we're here, my experience is something that won't have to be taught. This is an agricultural district. If you're not sure, go look at the map and check it out, okay? This is an agricultural district where for 34 years in the Southern Erie County part I've lived, and I ran my family's farm and operated and managed my family's farm. On the Wyoming County side, my mother's family were all farmers there. I spent summers growing up there. I even went to school for a while there. Every time I go to Wyoming County, I mention my family's name, I'm related to everyone in the room. So agriculture is not something that I'm going to have to be educated about. Agriculture is something I not only understand, I've lived. It's part of my heritage, it's part of who I am in my own world. And as far as the economy and making the economics better and the jobs in New York State, agriculture is the most misrepresented, misunderstood, and not supported strongly enough industry that we have in this district. And if we get to the point where we can start to support agriculture in the ways that it needs to be supported, Wyoming County is the largest dairy producing county in New York State. New York State is the largest dairy producing state in the nation. And the fact that we don't have the ability in Wyoming County to help produce the Greek yogurt that's so popular now, the fact that we're strangling not only agriculture but all the business owners in our communities with so much regulation. I hear it every day when I'm out there talking to all the business owners and the farmers. We're killing them. They can't do their work, and the work that they can do is hire new employees, expand their businesses, and make New York State the economic power that it used to be. If we can do those things, if we can support the agriculture and support the business owners as they need, then we won't have to worry about the economy, and we won't be called stupid anymore.
Thank you.
Shall I repeat it?
No. Most important issue is jobs. I guess what separates me is that I'm a small business person. I'm a dry cleaner. I employ about 12 people, and I'm in the most highly regulated industry in New York State for dry cleaners. If you're a dry cleaner in New York State, I tell people that you have the highest regulations in the country, second highest in the entire world here in New York State. 35% of dry cleaners have gone out of business in the last 10 years in New York State. They're all mom and pop people. There's no Walmart dry cleaners in New York State, okay? It's a mom, it's a mother, it's a father. They run the business, they hire a few people. But 35% of them are no longer here, and the rest of us are struggling. And it's because New York State has stranglehold on our economy up here. What I've done, I think, speaks volumes. And when I talked about my record, let me go through it. This is how you create a better business economy for people. You cut taxes 3 straight years. Never been done in the history of our village or town. Cut the size of the village government. When I started, there were 61 employees. When I left, there were 43. Tackled the rising health care costs. Before I was mayor, every government employee in the village of East Aurora got any health care unlimited options. 100% paid for by the taxpayer. Today, in the village of Aurora, every government employee contributes to the health care costs, and there are only 2 options. No riders. I was recognized in 2005 as the leader in New York State for consolidating emerging services. What does that mean? I worked with our town supervisor, and remember, if you hear about this, it's front page news in Buffalo News if anything happens around Western New York. But we merged the assessor's office, animal, dog control, building department, code enforcement, the courts, the clerk's position, grant writing services, justice, sewer department, and I think 3 water districts. That's one of the things that you do to help businesses and people stay so they can afford the taxes to stay in this community or to stay in Western New York. Those are the things you do to keep businesses here so it's not burdened with all the excess taxes that happen in New York State. There's more. My time is up, but there were more things that we did, and I'm glad to talk to you about it. Thank you.
How will you support and fund climate-smart communities in New York State?
Very briefly, first off, if it's a climate smart community, it has to be done without taxpayer dollars. I do not believe in the government subsidizing any energy involvement, whether it's wind industry, whatever it is. We look at the wind industry in Wyoming County. On the surface, maybe that's not bad, but when the government has to subsidize that so that they can actually make a profit, and then when those windmills and those wind turbines are manufactured in China, and they create hundreds of thousands of jobs in China and maybe 3,000 in Texas, then I think it's wrong. So I'm against any subsidizing any alternative energy sources. If they stand on their own merit and they work, fantastic, let's bring them along. But again, there's too many new energy sources that aren't up with the technology, haven't been put in place, that are actually subsidy-free right now in New York State or in our country. When they become sustainable on their own and prove to be worthwhile, I'll support them. So, I still have a minute. I want to go back to that last question because it's, when you talk about bringing businesses back to New York State, I did lead East Toronto to its best fiscal audit in almost 30 years. We cut so many things in the village. We eliminated village-owned vehicles for a number of government employees. We reduced their severance packages. We cut the village attorney's salary. But it's just the way that we looked at government. Government is not there to fund other people. Government is there to protect people. Okay? And when you start bringing government into a position like we're starting to see, I disagree with that. I don't think government should be controlling lives. We don't have to pay the government. We don't owe the government. The government is there for us. And too much recently I see where it's becoming the other way around. We're actually the purveyors, or how I'm thinking of the word. We're actually the people who the government's owning us. If that says it in the right way, I'm against that. I'd like to have a
Thank you.
My understanding of the proper name of this program is the Community Smart,
I'll get it exactly.
Climate Smart Communities. My understanding of this is not that it's necessarily something that the government's trying to make, put on the back of the communities as far as a taxable program. My understanding of it is that it's something that they're trying to do in partnership, collaboratively, and asking the communities if they would like to join. And by joining, they're going to sign an agreement saying, because if some of you don't know, I mean, it's a fairly new, it only started last year, and it's just in the beginning stages. They're going to ask the communities if they would like to become part of this program. And the idea is they're asking the towns to monitor their buildings to see if they are energy efficient. They're asking them to monitor their fleets to see how much they drive and if they could maybe partner in the cars and not use all the gas and the mileage. The thing that I find really interesting about it is in doing research about it, I think it's good because it's something that I believe when we talk about lowering taxes, you have to be careful when you cut taxes because for every action there's a consequence. And while taxes need to be cut and programs need to be looked at, you have to be careful when you cut them that you're not doing damage to your community that can sometimes be irreversible. I think in this instance what's really interesting is to look at the communities in Erie County that have joined this. There are 4 of them, 3 of which are in this district. None in Wyoming County have joined. And it's the kind of program that helps us move towards a green community and towards a better environment and towards a better future for our children. The one thing I have found out, and the one thing I wondered is, so if Wyoming County is not there, is it because agriculture looks at the environment in a different way? And I think that's probably true. The United Nations is starting a program where they're doing just it. They're doing this community sustainable study, but they're doing it specifically with agriculture. What I think we could do is go to the United Nations and talk to them and say, hey, out here in Erie and Wyoming County, we're starting this, but we're starting it in a way that really looks kind of at urban areas. Share with us. Share with us what you learn. And again, there's no expenditure here. It's a matter of interacting and communicating. Back to the idea of how do we make this better? We communicate. And then we bring this information back to New York State and bring it forward and say, look, we can be a leader here. Wyoming County can turn this around. Be sustainable, be green. And as far as funding energy alternatives, the coal and the gas industry are totally funded by the government, you know. And so to talk about the green energy being out of the realm, well, there's a lot more to look at than that. It's not just funding or looking at the green energy. There are other energy sources that are also government funded. So I think you need to look at the big picture, not just focus on the green energy alternatives. Okay, right, sorry.
Here's another angle on a similar question that we were just discussing. I don't think we talked about tax incentives previously. So this question says, do you support tax incentives for solar, wind, and other renewables in New York State?
I think like anything else, if you're going to talk about cutting taxes, if you're going to talk about tax incentives, there are actions and consequences. And while there might be some benefit to tax incentives, there's also going to be a cost that can we afford it? I think we're at a point in our state right now with our budget and our economy where there isn't just a yes or no. Yes, absolutely we need to do that. Because I don't know what that budget's going to look like. I've been told, feels more like a threat actually, that when that budget comes to my desk when I'm elected, it's going to be tall enough that I won't be able to see over it. If it is that complex, then I need to really, as a freshman assembly person, my job is going to be to try to target the things that are really important to this district, the things that I know you of the voters have told me matter, and then try to make sure that I focus on those issues relative to the taxes, whether they be trying to reduce taxes, whether they be giving incentives, any of those things, because there's no simple yes or no answer. We have to look at the complexity, and this thing is worse than an onion peeling it away. New York State is tough. The issues that we have out there are incredibly complex on every side. And so, sure, it would be great to say New York State leads the way in offering green energy tax rebates or alternatives, but realistically, we're a long way from my nickel. I'm a long way from blanketly saying that because I don't know enough about it, and I'm not sure anybody does at this point, other than the fact that we have a lot of economic issues to address, and we need to make sure when we address them, we're doing it in a strategic manner that won't hurt us somehow.
First off, I want to go back to that last question on the smart energy. And here's what happens, and it's politics, and this is government at its finest. They offer these programs, they say, we'd like you to have your community come involved, and then the lobbyists come into your community and say, well, here's what we can do. And I think in East Aurora, I'll double check, but I think they did buy some solar panels. And I think the cost of those solar panels, to recoup the cost of those solar panels that they're using, I think here in Aurora, is about 72 years. Those solar panels will be outdated and unusable supposedly in about 25. So that just doesn't make any sense to me. Okay? It's not an alternative. It's not a viable alternative. It's a cost to the taxpayers. And those are the types of programs I'm against. It sounds great, smart energy. They've tried to do it in my business. They've tried to come in and say, here, why don't you do this? Change these light fixtures. Well, those light fixtures are $7. The ones I'm using now are 30 cents. Okay, yeah, maybe I'll get 3 times the cost benefit out of them, 3 times the life. But again, common sense says that 3 times the life on 30, 35 cents is not going to equal $7. So tax incentives, the only thing I like about tax incentives is it gives the person or the organization the opportunity to look at the incentive and compare. Does it work for me? Will I make the cost? Will the savings be a benefit to me, the business, or the organization? Okay, so it's not being something they're told to do, it's something they can look at. So if it's a tax incentive, it's not everyone uses it, they'll get a chance to look at it and see if they make the decision whether or not they want to use that or not use it. So that's where they get the opportunity to crunch the numbers themselves and see if it works.
Will you make to get money out of politics in New York State?
2 minutes, seriously? Holy cow. You're really...
Take it from a person who's run a number of campaigns with no money and run against heavy machines. Let me give you a quick insight. When I ran against Dale Volker 4 years ago in the primary, he spent $2.4 million, the most ever in a primary in New York State. That was, we never saw that avalanche coming at us. And I don't even know, and I think I had about $40,000 at the time, which is incredible. 2 years ago, I think I spent $12,000, and my opponents spent over $250,000 each. I've run on fumes everywhere I've gone, and I believe that the best way to campaign is to go door to door, is to walk it, to ride it, and go talk to the people. And you do a personal connection, one-on-one, and the voter appreciates that. Never had the money. Look at this campaign we just ran. This primary was so heated. You know, I had to tap into my IRA. I think it's stupid. I think it's crazy. What I'd like to see done is have a limit. Here's how much you can spend. Here's how much, the one thing is, here's how much you can receive. I'm all for it. If you've got your own money and you're a millionaire, you know, and you want to spend it, God bless you. Okay, that's freedom. But PACs, super PACs, double PACs, whatever they are, they find that there's so many loopholes around it, and that's what makes the average citizen go crazy when they see this money, this absurd money come into campaigns, because you think that there's this, the McCain Act or whatever it was, there's 28 loopholes around it. I've been the victim of that. It's, until you tighten up the loopholes and put one straight shot, here's how we're going to campaign, here's the money, here's where it can come from, and here's how it can come. Until you do that, we're going to get what we get.
I'm sorry, was that question, I did not hear you say campaign reform. I thought I just heard you say
Specific reforms.
money out of politics in New York State, so you're talking about specific reforms to get the money out of politics. So you're talking about campaigns, and I just wanted to make sure that I understood it properly. Because there's a lot of politics in New York that are about campaigns, so I just wanted to make sure we were talking about the same thing. Like Dave, I agree totally. This is a very tough thing to do. My kind of take on this whole thing from the start has been, there have been calls for election campaign reform. We need for Albany to start election campaign reform. Awesome, that's terrific. We all know how long Albany can take to do reform sometimes. And so what I've done is taken it as my personal responsibility. When I first started in this campaign, I was told by national people I would need $120,000 to $150,000. When I talked to my local people, they said between $50,000 to $60,000. As Dave said, this is a low finance campaign. We took $6,000 to win the primary by 70%. I don't know how much we're spending. I know that it's under control because we've had an agreement that if we don't have the cash in hand, we're not spending on it, and we don't have much cash in hand. So I know we're not spending a lot, but the point being, we're making a solid choice, a conscious choice, not to make those expenditures, and instead go out to the people. What we've done, which I find to be very validating, is we've done a lot of direct mailers, and instead of going to someone or getting a PAC or whoever to put out these fancy mailers and put them in the mail, I've done personal letters where I've written the person's name in and signed my name at the bottom, and then taken them to people who want to support my campaign, and instead of them handing me a $25 or $50 or $100 check, look at them and said, I appreciate your support, and that's awesome, but I would rather ask if you would please engage with my campaign. Would you take a stack of 50 letters and stuff them and mail them for me? Because right then and there, they're now part of the effort. They're now engaged. We've now made a connection, communication. That's how this state can get better. We need to start talking to each other. We need to start listening to each other. We need to start working together. I understand, Dave, what you say about the whole, smart communities issue and how it's going to be a boondoggle in some ways, or it's going to end up bringing money. My perspective on it are some of the things I've done in the community through the legislature and on my own as a volunteer. It's about partnering. It's about forming collaborative partnerships with industry, with private and public sector, so that you can get these things done without more taxes, without more money. And I know it can happen because I've done it myself in my own community. I'm so glad to go sit down, apparently.
This is a jobs-focused question. I know it's been talked about a little bit in answers to other questions, but this one is very specific. What needs to be done to create jobs in New York State? That is a concern among voters in New York State. What do you propose to do as a solution to this problem?
I was with Erie County during the red-green budget, and for those of you who remember it, it was a horrendous time. It was one of the most really vicious times that I can ever remember in this community. And what I learned at that point in time is one of the biggest problems we had was that the biggest employer in Erie County was? Erie County. Thank you, class. Erie County, exactly. We cannot have government be the creator of jobs in any form. What we need to do, and what I hear every day from the people out there, is that we need to loosen up on the restrictions on the business owners and the leaders in this community so that they can create the jobs, so that they can help do exactly what they're able to do in their businesses, build them, create more jobs, create more economy. It sounds oversimplified, but day in and day out, business owners and especially farmers tell me, if we are allowed to do what we need to do, we appreciate regulations as they help safeguard the community. But the regulations they have on it at this point are making it so hard for us that we cannot grow our business, even when we have the potential to do so, even when we have the orders to fill for crops, even when we have the demand for Greek yogurt, for more milk in the dairy industry, even when small businesses like Dave's have the need that they can expand, they can't do it because regulations in New York State demand so much that they just don't have the ability to hire more employees, expand their plant, whatever it is that they need to do. So if we can just back up a little bit and give them that little bit of latitude, they'll do it for us. It's not like we have to do it for them. We need to be a supportive partner, not the overbearing parent.
Government doesn't create jobs, and that's probably the biggest misnomer in this country and New York State, is they think that we can tax ourselves and create more government jobs. In the last 10 years, New York State, I think, has maybe created a net of 150,000 jobs per se, and I think in that same time, the government has created 700,000 or 800,000. I don't know if those numbers are exact, but New York State's government jobs have grown tenfold over the private sector jobs. The red tape in New York State is the worst in the country. To get a job started here, a gentleman talked to me last night over at, in Ferrysburg. He wants to open up a restaurant. And my sister owns the Colton Lakes restaurant. And I saw watch since she started for the last 18 years, the red tape she's had to go through. When she bought the Strikersville pub, as a restaurant, it took her over 14 months to get her liquor license. For what? This is New York State. It's become a complete joke, and the businesses and the smart and the educated and the wealthy people move out of New York State. You look at Tom Golisano, moves out of New York State to save $5 million, and I was screaming at the TV when I heard that. I was laughing, going, you didn't hear one lawmaker in New York State say, where are we going to cut our budget to make up that $5 million that just walked out of our coffers? They never do. All they talk about is raising the taxes on us to make sure that they cover that $5 million. The wealthy leave this state in droves. The people who can't get jobs leave the state in droves because there are no businesses here, because we can't afford to be in business here. The taxes, the burdens that the New York State imposes on us are so bad that we pick up and leave. All you have to do is go down Union Road in Cheektowaga, where the old Dick's Plaza is, that whole Benderson, for a mile stretch, you'll find probably 80 to 100 empty stores, just in that stretch. They can't afford to stay here, and no matter what business it is. New York State has made it so tough. We have to start cutting the red tape, cut the corporate tax, and keep businesses here. Give them incentive to start keeping them here.
Is Mr. David Shank here?
Yes, he's in the hall.
Excuse me.
We're supposed to respond, right?
One more question for both candidates, and then we'll have your closing statements. The final question is, if elected, how will you forward the needs of our district from a minority position? A newly elected freshman.
Who goes
Mr.
first?
DiPietro is in the minority. Excuse me, who was last?
He was last. So he
Okay,
would
then
be
you go
next.
first.
Well, he
He
would have
does.
stayed up there to answer.
Yes, please. Sorry.
We can toss another coin.
I had this question last night. I've had it probably 20 times on the campaign trail. They say, you've got a great record, you've done a lot, but when you go up into the assembly, it's a whole different ballgame because you're going to be in a bulletproof minority as a Republican. So what can you do? Well, I look back at someone like Tom Reynolds when he was in the minority. He was able to twist a lot of arms to get a lot of things done. A lot of things happened when he was in there. It takes a leader. And I tell people that every revolution starts with one person. It wasn't the masses that start the revolution, it's one person. And if we want to change New York State, you need one person that's going to go up there, not be capitulated, not get bought, not have be in somebody's back pocket, that's going to actually fight for something and actually articulate it and say it. Because too many times you go up and you look at Albany and it's pretty dysfunctional. And on my radio show, I talked about these people on, and 90% of them wouldn't come on because I called them out. Like Stefan does, watching the taxpayer. And I knew where the bodies were buried. And I said, someone's got to go to Albany, and that's one of the passions I have, and call these people out. Go with passion. Passion sells. You go up there and you can start articulating your message. The Senate's, the Republican Senate is the majority. I know all the senators in this area personally. I can go to them and I can pound my fist a little bit and say, look, you know what's right. If this is right, let's do it. But too many times, both sides, they compromise. They compromise to the point where the state, they don't do what's right for the people and the taxpayer. They do what's right on the political end up in Albany. Well, we don't live in Albany, folks. We live here in Western New York. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that Western New York is suffering hugely. And I've got a 5-year-old daughter. I don't want to see her leave here because she can't find a job, just like my friends' daughters and their sons. And I've watched dozens of them leave over the years and break up families. Not going to happen. I'm not going up to Albany for politics. I'm going up there to do a job. I'm going up there to talk to people and try and get an agenda passed and try and do what's right, not just for our area, but for the state, to make it a better climate, to keep our kids here, to keep the jobs here.
We didn't identify much political context of our candidacies when we first started, and so in case you don't know, I'm a member of the Independence Party. I've been that for 7 years now. It was my choice after my town in Eden decided, the Democrats and Republicans decided to cross-endorse, and there was no reason for us to go to the polls and vote. And I felt like I do believe that voting is a really important element of our democracy and that was wrong. So I changed to the Independence Party at that time. My candidacy is endorsed by a number of parties. In addition, the Independence Party did not endorse, I won it in a primary. The Democrats and the Working Families Party have both endorsed my candidacy as well. The important part of that for me is, just as everyone's voiced here tonight, the Democrats will control the assembly regardless of who ends up being elected. It will be a Democratic assembly. What that means, and what I've spent all summer talking to especially the Republican farmers in Wyoming County, who their first question to me with their finger in my chest is, what party are you? And I tell them I'm an independent and you can like me. Because what I'm going to be able to do is go to Albany, and I will, because I've been endorsed by the Democrats, I have told them that I will caucus with them. I've also told them that I'm not necessarily going to agree with them on every issue, and when I don't, or when my constituents tell me that issue isn't the right thing for our district, then I won't vote with them. But because I will caucus with them, and I will vote with them on the issues that my constituents feels are right, for the first time in more years than most people, just about anybody in this room can remember, you're going to have a representative in Albany that can change legislation and bring home money. And that just doesn't happen to the Republicans, and Davis just said that to you. And as heinous as that sounds in the democratic process, that is the reality that we're facing at this point in time. And at least you know that in electing me, you'll have that opportunity still with someone who's independent. I was hired by the legislature, by the Republican Party, to run the media for all the legislators. I then went to work for them in a district office, and when the legislature was a Republican lost and the Democrats came in, they kept me to work for them as well. I've always worked both sides of the aisle because it's about the community for me, not about the politics. I'm respectful of everyone and what they believe in their party to be, but I totally believe this job for me will be about doing the best that I can to serve all of you.
Thank you. Now we come to closing statements, and each candidate has 2 minutes for a closing statement. Since Christina Abt was first in opening, David DiPietro will be first in closing.
Well, again, thank you for having me. That was a quick 50 minutes. And I want to thank Christina. We've been on the campaign trail together. I've seen her now at a couple places. It's nice to have an opponent who you can talk to and you get along with. Because I've been in a number of races where it gets so heated that you don't have that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm excited about this race. Let me tell you a quick bit about me. I'm an endorsed Republican. I'm also an endorsed conservative. I'm endorsed right to life. I have an A rating with the NRA and Scope. I'm endorsed by both. I'm looking forward to go to Albany just for the reasons I said. My track record, I like to say I cut my teeth on local politics. I've learned I wasn't just in local politics. I'm happy to say that I've actually made a positive change in local politics. And that didn't happen as a Republican or a Democrat. That happened in a village that's nonpartisan, that has six trustees, all different parties. And so people say, oh, you're just a Republican. No, I'm not. I had to cross lines on every one of those issues. Everything that we reformed in East Aurora, it took crossing party lines. And that, trust me, when you have 6 trustees, it's not a 4-man board, it's a 7-man board. It takes a lot that you have to work with everybody. And I'm proud to say that we had great boards that we were all working together, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. I always tell people on the board, you don't always agree with your spouse on your time, so none of us are all going to agree. But we did make those changes. And I think it's that mindset that I want to take to Albany when we get up there, to know how to make the change. I think there's too many people up in Albany who don't know how to make the change. No, they don't want change. I knew it. Boy, the gods are right on with that. The gods of Albany. But that, I think, is probably the most important thing, that we're going to go up there and we're going to try and effectuate the change for this district. But all, as they say, a rising tide lifts all boats. It's not just to bring home bacon. It's not just to make a couple changes. It's to try and change the mindset, try and be a voice in Albany that can get some legislation passed that will bring everybody and keep people in New York State.
When I first started this campaign, being a media person, the first thing I did was start to create the slogans and all the things that we media people tend to do. And the slogan that I started with, we started with APT for Assembly, of course, and then looking at those letters, it was like, okay, how can we parlay AFA, APT for Assembly? And I said, oh, all for all. That works, it fits, it's the right letters, it's good, we like it. Over the last 6 months, I've learned that all for all is so much more than an appropriate campaign slogan that might fit a 30-second soundbite. I've learned that the purpose, the reason I'm running, is because I don't believe in the politics. I'm respectful of it, but I know that I can do the job to go down to Albany. I've proven it in my community. I've proven it in the legislature when I've worked in the legislature and in the district offices. I've proven it in the business community with my own business, with my own horse farm, running the Chamber of Commerce in my community. I've had a well-rounded background that has led me to this place in time. And I also would like to mention that the current incumbent also agrees that I would be a good person for the office as well, which is a great honor to me because he comes from the farming community where my mother's family came from and where the farmers down there are very tough on anyone who doesn't have an R behind their name. So I'm grateful for all of that. But what it means to me isn't whether Dave's the right one or I'm the right one. What it means to me is that people really, truly believe and understand when I look them in the eye and say, I really want to do this because I know I can do the job and make a difference. I know I can go to Albany and build coalitions with the fellow legislators who I know the incumbent assembly people, I know the incumbent senators, and those will be elected I've worked with in government here already. And I believe that we can start to form a new day in this community where we build collaborative partnerships that change the way downstate operates against upstate. Where Sheldon Silver, who is the elephant in the room that no one wanted to mention tonight, may have the power, but if we build the right coalitions within our own group and promote the natural resources that are so important to this community that the rest of the state doesn't have, that we can start to build our own power base where we can make that balance better and make New York State a better place for all of us. So I want to thank again the League of Women Voters. the senior center, the voters for coming out tonight. Dave, you, again, I appreciate the fact that our campaign is really about the issues and not personal. My kids didn't want me to run because they were afraid that it would get very personal, and so I really appreciate that fact. And just thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.